you walk away, you don't hear me say. Welcome to another episode of TWK Reviews. Today we're talking all about Kingdom Hearts 1, or at least the version found on the PlayStation 4. Just a warning, there will be spoilers, so continue at your own discretion, everyone. To sum up our story in the simplest of terms, we follow Sora, a boy with a dream of venturing off into the world alongside his friends Riku and Kairi. Bad fortune unfolds, however, as their entire world is engulfed in darkness, and on top of that, Sora is separated from his friends. I'd call that quite the bad day, definitely the opposite of what Ice Cube would enjoy. So, Sora wakes up in our main city of the game, Traverse Town, where he eventually meets up with Squall Leonhart, then soon after, Donald Duck and Goofy, who are on a mission to find their king, Mickey Mouse, and to do so, they'll need the wielder of the Keyblade, aka Sora. So off our heroes go to find their respective friends. Along the way, Riku falls under the influence of Maleficent and basically turns heel. On top of that, Kairi is more or less comatose. Thankfully, they both get better thanks to the good, wholesome nature of Sora. It also turns out that an evil being by the name of Ansem was slowly taking control of Riku and is our final boss of the game. After all is said and done, the day is saved, but everyone is still unfortunately separated from one another, meaning sequel bait, baby! As you can tell, this first game has quite the simple plot, all things considered, and that's for the best, as the more complicated an initial installment is, the easier it would have been for it all to just fall apart. But of course, narrative is only part of the reason you'd want to play Kingdom Hearts. Another would be the gameplay, and that's quite the mixed bag, even on the PlayStation 4. First, we have the combat, which has the menu of a typical turn-based RPG, but the pace of an action game. This was quite innovative back in 2002, and yes, the fact that I was a young lad back then means I'm practically ancient now, so no need to remind me in the comments section. What I will remind you all of is the sheer variety of enemies that one can encounter here. Much like the last video, once it starts, it just doesn't stop. I also enjoy how many enemies have different attack patterns that you need to watch out for. For example, these bigger enemies will require a different strategy than ones who fly, which need different tactics from the type that wields a sentient shield, etc., so on and so forth. They could have made all these baddies simple hack and slash fodder like a Muso game, but I'm quite happy that they didn't. The other parts of the gameplay though, I'm not quite as keen on. First is platforming, kind of just the style of making a 3D game at the time, and it feels about 10% better than Mystical Ninja on the N64, so take that for what you will. Thankfully, it's never needed too much, but when it is, be sure to time your jumps especially perfectly. The next part of the gameplay is the Gummy Ship, aka Bootleg Star Fox. I know this mode has its fans, but I am not a fan of it here. This is how we get from one world to another, and it's not until quite a few hours in that we finally get the ability to fast travel. Before that, you'll be forced to play the same level again and again if you wish to travel. As a kid, this frustrated me to no end, and as an adult, it's a mild annoyance, but still one that exists. As you can tell by the footage, it isn't until very late in the game that I do anything to customize the ship, mainly because you really don't need to before then. So the gameplay is mostly good, but we all know why you really want to play Kingdom Hearts: the Disney Worlds! This was the biggest of deals at the time, let me tell you. Being able to play through the plots of the biggest Disney films with some of the original voice cast returning to reprise their roles to boot? What fan of Disney wouldn't want that? Not all worlds are created equal, however. First, the best ones, at least in my very original opinion, so take all of this with the biggest handfuls of salt. Alice in Wonderland is a nice beginner area. It's pretty small, but it also utilizes its area, especially in terms of making good usage of the wacky source material. Agrabah is a pretty good level with a decent amount of optional areas to explore, and easily one of the better areas to grind for money. Halloween Town is another location that, while small, uses its area well, but the backtracking can get annoying, but thankfully, at least for me, you start to make forward progress right before that occurs. And And for our final good Disney world, it's Olympus Coliseum. This is where your obligatory tournament battles take place, and it's not a bad way to grind for XP. Let me tell you, the fight against Hades had me driven up a frickin' wall, man. This mother effing fucker kicked my ass so many times, but fret not, as I eventually took him down, and in his own tournament no less. Although why he wasn't the final boss, I'll never know, especially when you consider how much of an actual pushover the final boss of the tournament was.
We're the champs!
Now we get to the negative side of things. First off, Deep Jungle. This one area where I've seen people get turned around in quite a bit, and it's not due to its size either. In all fairness, the game does tell you where to go, but I can also see players not familiar with the layout struggling to locate these areas without good old trial and error, and that can get pretty frustrating. It also doesn't help that whenever you want to get back down to the ground area, you're forced into a sliding minigame. Thankfully, the level's boss is on the higher side of the quality scale, which might be its only saving grace. Next is Monstro, which is just a maze inside of a whale. A maze that looks like a 1970s van interior, but a maze, and if I didn't already have the layout mostly memorized, I'd probably be more frustrated right now. And lastly, we have everyone's favorite punching bag, Atlantica. Every time I play Kingdom Hearts, it's with an open mind that I hope maybe this will be finally the time that I can enjoy this level, but nope, not here at least. Out of all the levels that have a large scale, it's the water level with full 4-dimensional movements. I'm sure it was impressive for the development team, but for me at least, it's always a pain. And even knowing where I'm going, it still took me nearly an hour to finish this level. For reference, most levels usually take around 20-30 minutes, so take that, plus the fact that most first-time players will be wandering aimlessly and Atlantica will take 90 minutes easily. And on top of that, the boss fight against Ursula is easily among the less fun moments you'll have in the game, just going around in a circle while avoiding lightning bolts. What joy! As for the final areas, first it's Hollow Bastion. If you wanted a world to feel like a Final Fantasy dungeon, then here you go. It's got puzzles and tough enemy encounters galore. Then we have the final world, or should I say the end of the world. Sorry, but if I can get a JoJo's reference in, then I will. Here, you'll have an almost non-stop barrage of the toughest fights of the game, all culminating with a multi-stage fight with Ansem. Why he ends up utilizing a giant ship, though, however, is something only the game's director Tetsuya Nomura can answer. I will say, though, that for this fight, Kira and Aurora spells are your best friends and should be used frequently. Oh, and I noticed that while going through the final level, I forgot to visit the 100 Acre Wood. Oops, I guess? On the topic of guesses, if you guessed that Kingdom Hearts had a bangin' soundtrack, then you'd be correct. Original composition by Yoko Shimomura, alongside a killer theme by Utada Hikaru. God dang, does it rule. Utada's Simple and Clean might be the best pop song of all time. Seriously, they knocked it right out of the park here. MJ might be the king, but Utada-san had a royal masterpiece here, and for the record, I do prefer the Planet B remix for its electronic elements. As for my favorite original song of the game, that'd be the Traverse Town theme. For the past 20 years, it has been stuck in my head, and I hope that this chill melody never leaves. And that, everyone, was Kingdom Hearts 1. It's simple, but not exactly so clean. While clunky at times, it never gets to the point of being unplayable, and I can also see why there are those who consider this their favorite in the series. Me, though, I honestly put 1 and 2 on par with one another, but that comparison is a discussion for another time. For the right now, all I gotta say is that this was one hell of a way to start what would become one of my favorite video game franchises of all time. As for what's next on the docket, let's just say we're heading off on another space adventure, and it probably won't be the last on this channel. Oh yeah, we're all spacemen, with a rocket on our backs, and the universe is down for our rave attack.